like to read because sometimes when it's fairy tale, it can take you magical places.
You know, you wonder why does a journalism company care that much about childhood literacy, but at the Scripps Howard Foundation, we feel like childhood literacy is the very beginning of an informed world.
Having the books be in our students' hands get us to that next step, because if children are not excited about reading, they are not going to read.
When students have access to books, that will help with their comprehension, their fluency, as well as their vocabulary.
Brielle loves to read. She is the #1 reader in my household. She will read anywhere that she can.
You can just read about anything you want, and it'll kind of bring your mind all back to the world.
If you give a child a book, they will know that their opportunities are endless. There are no boundaries whatsoever with who they can become, what they can learn. It's just really cool to see that with the Bob Scripps Community Fund and the Scripps Howard Foundation, we're able to give children who have never owned a book several books to walk out with.
And you see them, they immediately drop to the floor and they're in the corner and they're starting to read through and crinkle those pages. And it's an amazing thing that Scripps and Scripps employees get to take a part in, because you're forming the future.
I feel like that the foundation has helped a lot of parents in my neighborhood. Some parents have more than one kid, like myself, and we can't afford to pay for $10 a kid to get the books that they need.
And I think the Scripps Howard Foundation has done an awesome thing by giving this gift to kids, see their world open, to dream more.
I think for this literacy campaign, we should have big dreams, because those kids need us to dream big for them. Kids that learn how to read, they grow up to vote, they grow up to be civically involved, they're more likely to go to high school, graduate from college, have a career. And, you know, we feel like that's part of our community responsibility, and that's why we are so involved in childhood literacy.
Good evening. I'm Liz Carter, President and CEO of the Scripps Howard Foundation. The foundation is committed to creating a better informed world through journalism education and childhood literacy. We believe that literacy is crucial to overcoming poverty. It's in that spirit tonight that we will award a $100,000 grant to a nonprofit in Greater Cincinnati that supports family literacy in impoverished neighborhoods. The grant is made possible by the Bob Scripps Community Fund of the Scripps Howard Foundation in partnership with the Greater Cincinnati Foundation and WCPO. Before we announce the winner, let's take a look at our partners who made this grant possible.
It's a new day at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. Help us build an even better community, the place you call home, with a brighter future for every single one of us.
This is home, where big dreams are born, where we work hard to support our families, lend a helping hand to our neighbors in their time of need, celebrating the traditions and events that bring us together. Owned by the same Cincinnati company for more than 70 years. And what matters to you matters to us.
Our first finalist is the Children's Home of Cincinnati. The Children's Home of Cincinnati offers several early literacy programs, including Great Start and Kaleidoscope Play and Learn. These programs aim at helping parents and young children incorporate literacy and early learning into daily routines. The Children's Home of Cincinnati also offers 2 home visitation programs that promote early literacy. The second finalist is Mount St. Joseph University's Project Ready. Project Ready serves preschoolers living in poverty, their parents, and educators by improving literacy and reading readiness skills for school. The Mount hopes to extend Project Ready to 4 Cincinnati preschools in need of literacy programming. And now, to the winner of the $100,000 grant, we're pleased to award the grant to Learning Through Art. Learning Through Art is a nonprofit aimed at building literacy through art and arts-integrated education. Its program, Books Alive, engages early readers and empowers caregivers to celebrate reading. The program helps books come alive through sight, sound, and touch. WCPO spoke with Learning Through Art's co-founder, Kathy Wade, about what they'll accomplish with their grant.
We will have the opportunity to, at one fell swoop, open up what we do to the entire region. To be able to wrap as many families as we possibly can, empowering them to be able to engage themselves, their families, their community to read. Being able to read is so paramount right now. So if we're going to have resilient communities, if we're going to truly build community through art, we want to start that with being anchored in literacy. It will be able to wrap families around literacy, strengthen them, and make them more resilient.
The foundation is committed to developing the next generation of journalists. As part of that commitment, we offer a year-long postgraduate fellowship program for young journalists with the ability and desire to be the next industry leaders. I'd like to recognize our 2020-2021 Scripps Howard Fellows, Reen Alges, Maya Rosenfield, Molly Simon, and Zipporah Osei. In June, the Fellows will start a 12-month program with the Scripps Washington Bureau, Newsy, and ProPublica's New York City newsroom. We would also like to congratulate the winners of the Foundation's 2 Journalism Education Awards. The Teacher of the Year is Jennifer Thomas of Howard University, and the Administrator of the Year is Susan King from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. In just a few moments, we'll begin celebrating the winners of the Scripps Howard Awards. We hope you enjoy this tribute to journalism, and we thank you for joining us.
The Scripps Howard Awards is brought to you by the presenting sponsor, Scripps. Media sponsors, WCPO, WXYZ, and Newsy. Silver sponsors, Methuselah Advisors, John and Diane Chaches family, and Facebook. And bronze sponsors, Google, Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley.
897 entries, 50 judges, 15 category winners, $170,000 in prize money, 1 Impact Award winner. Tonight is the 67th annual Scripps Howard Awards.
Truth really does still matter, but we need journalists to help us learn what the truth is.
The awards honor journalism that exemplifies excellence and shines light in dark places.
It's the very essence of watchdog journalism.
Incredibly overwhelming.
It read like literary nonfiction.
One of tonight's winners will take home the top honor, the Impact Award.
The Scripps Howard Awards just celebrates that, acknowledges that. You know, these are reporters that go into work every day and they sometimes spend literally years on putting together a deep story. And just to be recognized for those efforts. I don't think they do it for the recognition. They do it because they have a calling, they believe it's right, they believe in what they do.
It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 67th annual Scripps Howard Awards.
Good evening to you. I'm Carolyn Clifford. I'm an anchor and reporter at WXYZ TV in Detroit. And tonight, our society is enduring a crisis, one that has upended the lives of people everywhere. Journalists are working tirelessly to bring us the stories of this global pandemic. They are providing information to help us cope, information to help us survive, and information to help us recover. This is the role of journalism and why it is important to humankind. It's an honor to host the Scripps Howard Awards. The Scripps Howard Foundation salutes the work of journalists everywhere. Tonight's awards recognize some amazing work from 2019, and we are highlighting all forms, from print to podcast, broadcast to photography. They honor journalism that exposes horrific abuses, pushes for open government, and maintains high journalistic standards. Misinformation is certainly dangerous. Our winners are relentless in seeking the truth. Among tonight's extraordinary award winners is an investigation into Flint, Michigan's deadly water crisis. It uncovers how officials stayed silent during one of the largest outbreaks of Legionnaires' disease in U.S. history. A community paper discovers how residents in one of 3 Alaska communities live without police protection. Also, how the law enforcement system fails Alaska's indigenous people. And a reporter reveals a collapsing system of rural health care. It's told through the lens of those left stranded, patients waiting overnight for a free clinic. Also, a doctor with no backup for 11,000 square miles. And a hospital staff working for 12 weeks without pay. One of the winners will take home the evening's top honor, the Impact Award, and another $10,000. We'll introduce the finalists later on in this show, but first, we want to express our gratitude to the E.W. Scripps Company, also stations WCPO, WXYZ, and the Scripps national brand Newsy for all of their support for tonight's awards. And a special thank you to the members of the Board of the Trustees of the Scripps Howard Foundation, the E.W. Scripps Company, and the Scripps and Howard families. We begin now with honoring the winners of the specialty awards. Here's the work of our winner in the visual journalism category.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in visual journalism. The winner is Photography Portfolio for Rodrigo Abd of the Associated Press.
His work is so striking and so compelling. You look at a Rodrigo image and you literally get pulled into it and can't look away.
Rodrigo actually took us inside Venezuela. So his stories about the famine crisis, the collapse of the oil industry, how that's impacting the fishing industry, with just some really intimate, great looks at life inside Venezuela. There's one particular image of a family in a fishing village, and they're actually eating like some of the crab, and you can just tell that this is not a good thing because these fish are contaminated with oil, and you can just tell that these people are suffering. And that image there really just took me deep inside his photo essay.
Ab took a series of photos showing the financial burden of Venezuelans taking care of their dead. Struggling families rent caskets or turn to amateur morticians.
The people who are taking care of their sick and dying on their own, those images are shocking and can, I think, only be captured visually.
Abd also chronicles a meeting of indigenous people in Pará State, Brazil, an area ravaged by massive forest fires and illegal logging. His technique put Abd's portfolio over the top.
He took a chance with an old style technique using a box camera and film. This sort of this really throwback look of 30s and 40s portraiture in its heyday of photography.
It gave it such a richness and texture, as well as the intimacy that you don't get with digital primarily.
Gut-wrenching images and amazing work there. Here's a word from photographer Rodrigo Abd, who's on location in Peru.
It's an honor for me to receive the Photographic Portfolio Award. Thanks for the Scripps Howard Foundation for this recognition. As a staff photographer working for the Associated Press, I focus in Latin America. My base is Lima, Peru. Last year, I worked really hard trying to document many crises in Latin America, the environmental crisis in the Amazon jungle, the political crisis in Chile, and most of my work last year was focused in Venezuela, where there is a social, a political crisis, and also an environmental crisis. I document the story of fishermen families that struggle to survive in the middle of the Maracaibo Lake that is basically destroyed by the oil industry. And another story I did in Venezuela that is part of this portfolio is the sad story of families that don't have money, economic resources to pay a proper funeral service. In my work, I try to focus in human stories. I spend time with people, with families, trying to go in deep in their stories. For that reason is that sometimes I not only use the normal gear, the digital gear, but also like a wooden camera that gives me this time to portray. This award is important for me, first for the recognition, and second because it gives me more energies to continue working hard, trying to document the stories that really matters. For example, now I am here in Lima, Peru. That's why I have this. I am covering the coronavirus crisis, this pandemic that for sure is going to change our lives and the world forever.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in opinion. The Walker Stone Award. The winner is Life, Politics, and Corruption in Alabama by Kyle Wittmeyer with the Alabama Media Group.
His reporting was spectacular, but he didn't waste his power as an opinion writer. He painted the reader a picture, and he combined real passion with not only facts and great reporting, but marshaled them in such a way as to make them almost inarguable.
When a Birmingham former mayor and convicted felon died, Wittmeyer's column reflected on the man's dishonorable past.
He did what amounted to a novel as a biography of a corrupt Alabama politician. It was wonderful.
In another piece, Wittmeyer wrote about Alabama governors wearing blackface in college.
She said that her actions as a young person was not her 50 years later. And he said, no, in fact, the person she had become 50 years later was arguably worse. And he lined up examples to show that she was as intolerant as her behavior exposed her as being 50 years before.
He also wrote columns on an abortion ban, a public records battle, and immigration raids.
He didn't have any sacred cows. What he had was a sense of journalistic ethics, a sense of outrage about the ne'er-do-wells in the political system of the South. It read like literary nonfiction. I liked the writing itself. I liked the voice. I liked the pacing.
His reporting was tremendous, just really good. And he would lead the reader to the conclusion he wanted them to see in a way that I had, was very powerful. It was very powerful.
I tell him he's one hell of a writer. I mean, that's what I tell him, because I think those pieces were standouts, and standouts among some excellent stuff.
Wow, certainly bold and eye-opening. Columnist Kyle Wittmeyer accepts his award from his home in Alabama.
Hello from my backyard in Birmingham, Alabama. When I got into journalism, I did so because it promised to be something different every day, but I don't think any of us ever imagined something so different as this. This is a great honor, especially when I look at all the other finalists and all of the other winners, but I can't help but wonder what this ceremony is going to look like next year and how we'll compare to the courageous work being done by journalists all over the world right now. I want to thank all those brave truth tellers for the work that they're doing. I want to thank this foundation for the award, and I want to thank my wife Elizabeth. I want to thank my two children, Ward and Margaret, who have made me more aware of what's really important than I ever have been before in my life. My boy is 4. He has lots of questions about what's going on right now, and I don't always have answers, but you guys will always be the answer for mine. Love you.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in environmental reporting, the Edward J. Mimin Award. The winner is Polluted by Money by Rob Davis of the Oregonian, Oregon Live. The 4-part investigative series revealed how unlimited campaign donations has undermined environmental protections. Oregon is one of 5 states with no limits on campaign giving.
It was astonishing and eyebrow-raising and jaw-dropping. He took an enormous amount of data of campaign contributions in the state of Oregon, compared them with the rest of the nation, and found that Oregon, known as one of the greenest states in America, was actually being corrupted legally, in his view, by campaign contributions from corporations. And they really seem to, over the years, have killed or spiked a lot of environmental regulations, a lot of environmental enforcement, killed a lot of environmental protection policies in Oregon, of all places.
I didn't know, and I think a lot of Oregonians don't know, how much campaign money is contributed, and that sometimes politicians use it for personal expenses.
They went down to a single factory and showed how neighbors had been complaining for years about it, and influence of political money on the legislators who controlled things like pollution regulation.
The presentation was fantastic. They used a lot of graphics. They went on site and did a lot of videotaping. They gave Oregonians a voice. All of the data that they presented has equipped voters in Oregon to call for reform and legislation that will change the way things are handled now.
This story by the Oregonian did make change because it motivated the legislature to take action and get a ballot measure in place for November when the citizens of Oregon can decide on something that the Oregonian exposed. The Oregonian stood out for its enterprise and imaginative look at a set of facts that were available to everybody, but no one looked at them and then no one made the connections that they did.
Courageous and brave to do that digging. Here's reporter Rob Davis on accepting this award.
I want to thank the Scripps Howard Foundation for recognizing our work, along with the incredible journalism of colleagues I hold in such high regard. I'm truly humbled. I also want to thank my wife, Kayla, and my toddler, Junie, who helped press publish on the first part, and my parents for their inspiration. My colleagues at the Oregonian, especially Beth Nakamura, Teresa Mahoney, and Mark Friesen, elevated the work. Great journalism needs great editors. This project had three. Mark Katchis got it off the ground, and Therese Bottomley and Steve Suo made it sing. It feels strange to accept an award in the middle of a pandemic, so I want to take this chance to thank the brilliant minds working to solve it, and my colleagues in journalism who are working to explain, investigate, and illuminate it. My late mentor, Jay Pace, once told me, I just want to make sure we're giving our community the critical information it needs to make intelligent decisions. Journalists across the globe are living up to that mission every day, and never has it been more important than it is now. Thank you very much.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in business and financial reporting. The William Brewster Stiles Award. The winner is Boeing's 737 MAX Crisis by Dominic Gates, Mike Baker, Steve Militich, and Louis Cam of the Seattle Times. The year-long series began after Lion Air Flight 610, a Boeing 737 MAX plane, crashed in October of 2018, killing all 189 people on board. The Seattle Times investigations revealed design flaws in the 737 MAX's flight control system, concluded that Boeing delivered flawed safety analysis to the FAA, and showed employees pressured to prioritize cost over safety. During the Seattle Times investigations, a second 737 MAX crashed in Ethiopia in October of 2019, killing all 157 people on board.
We were flying planes that in any given situation, in a matter of about 30 seconds, a plane could crash going 500 miles an hour into the earth, killing everybody on board. That's intimidating.
I think they were able to break one scoop after another on a story that was a huge international and national story, but for them was such an important local story because of what Boeing means to the Seattle area.
This story was pretty exhaustive. They spent a lot of time going through it chronologically. For us, it was following the path, the graphics, the artwork and everything, made it simple for people to understand complex aviation issues.
It was just a very impressive piece of not only reporting but writing. Incredibly sourced in terms of the people that they talked to, from Boeing employees to federal regulators to consumers who were no longer wanting to fly on a 737 MAX.
The stories have been cited at congressional probes into the actions of Boeing and the FAA. Boeing has replaced its head of commercial planes division and its CEO.
It was a lot of just good, thorough investigative reporting. You don't necessarily see that kind of in-depth investigative reporting in business.
Saving lives at all costs. Reporter Dominic Gates accepts the honor on behalf of the Seattle Times.
Hello, I'm Dominic Gates, the aerospace reporter for the Seattle Times. Our team here is honored by the award for our coverage of the 737 MAX crashes. Our work got national attention first in March of last year, just a week after the second crash, when we published a long piece about the flaws in the software that had caused the crashes. That was the result of months of reporting before that. And we followed it up later with scoops about what had gone wrong inside the FAA to certify the airplane, and what had gone wrong inside Boeing to miss the flaws in the design. Our work got national attention. It brought in national press who also did great work, and I think the US press has done a tremendous job in scrutinizing Boeing as a result of this. Kudos to my team, reporters Mike Baker, Louis Cam, Steve Militich, and editors Rami Grunbaum and Ray Rivera.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in coverage of breaking news. The winner, the El Paso Dayton shooting by the staff of the Washington Post. The Post covered mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton as a single national moment of gun violence. In 13 hours, 31 people were killed.
The package was very comprehensive in covering both the breaking news on the ground in El Paso and in Dayton that occurred within a matter of hours of each other. There's the risk that a national newspaper will come in and Bigfoot a story, employ stereotypes or overreaching. And in this case, the Post was really hewed to the facts in multiple sites and then pulled back and allowed readers to understand the larger picture of where these incidents fit within the history of mass shootings.
A 12-page special section recalled the nation's mass shootings going back to the University of Texas Clock Tower massacre in 1966.
They calculated the number of days between each of these mass shootings. We saw that this time gets smaller and smaller and smaller going forward. So it really did provide you with a look at how mass shootings had become part of our culture, dare I say.
They had some very good social media presence. They had really strong, short, engaging video presentations, and they had good graphics.
All in all, it was a tour de force of providing broad national context to what might otherwise be covered as independent local incidents.
The Washington Post package included a story about a girls' soccer team that was fundraising at the El Paso Walmart during the shooting. A coach was severely injured. The Post was there when the team decided to play scheduled games a few days later.
As a national outlet, that's easily a story that could be blown off. It's not essential. And yet through it, you saw the way that people kind of cope with grief. But it has a very honest line. It's easy to wrap things up like a fairy tale, but there's a line that says, in a perfect world, they would have won this game. But this isn't a perfect world.
Wow.
It's very moving.
Heartbreaking, but certainly leaving us with hope, right? Simone Sebastian accepts the honor on behalf of the staff of the Washington Post.
Thank you to the Scripps Howard Foundation for this recognition of our staff's coverage of the tragedies in El Paso and Dayton. It is a testament to the spirit of collaboration in the Washington Post newsroom. During that grim and hectic weekend in August, teams of staff reporters, freelancers, photographers, and videographers deployed to distant corners of the country and worked with our data journalists, graphic designers, and researchers to bring that moment of national grief to the public. It is a bittersweet honor. Our staff has become adept at covering mass shootings because, sadly, we do it so often. We dedicate this to the victims of gun violence who, over the decades, have shared their stories, their grief, and their horror with us, allowing us to ask questions, take photos, and shoot video of the most painful moments of their lives. We hope our journalism will continue to shed light on this uniquely American story.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in community journalism. The winner, Lawless, by Kyle Hopkins, Lauren Holmes, Bill Roth, and Mark Lester with the Anchorage Daily News and ProPublica. The investigation revealed how public safety services are failing Indigenous people in Alaska. Among the findings, 1 in 3 Alaska villages have no local police. Convicted criminals are hired as safety officers in dozens of rural communities. And they reported wrenching stories like a grandmother turned police officer who hid rape victims in her own living room.
It was stunning, shocking, actually. The work that they did was unbelievable. What they did was basically take a hard look at how policing is taking place out in remote areas of Alaska. And what they found was there really wasn't any policing.
The reporting and data collection was helped with a grant from ProPublica.
ProPublica also gave them the guidance and the editing and helped them elevate the reporting to another level that a community newspaper may not have been able to achieve on its own.
I thought that the story did a really nice job of kind of putting a face to the larger problem. I thought it was just very well written, just a manner that kept drawing me back to read more about what was happening.
We have to do lockdown. That's the toughest one. Also suicide or those are the very toughest ones. The domestic violence they're also the hardest ones.
Alaska has some of the highest rates of sexual assault and domestic violence, and nobody to protect the victims. The Anchorage Daily News took on that role. They had incredible visuals that helped take people to the places that they were writing about, where most Americans, never get to go. They proposed solutions. There were many tangible effects from this reporting, which was another reason that it rose to the top.
The U.S. Department of Justice pledged $52 million for improving policing. Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy announced plans to post 15 additional troopers in rural Alaska, a 40% increase. Proposed legislation would change the hiring and screening process of rural officers.
When you talk about community and the importance of community journalism, I don't know if it gets any smaller than this. You're talking about remote towns with maybe dozens of people, or maybe, if you're lucky, hundreds of people. And for these journalists to take the time to look at this problem and really dive deep into it, as I said, was very impressive. It's far from being fixed, but if it wasn't for these journalists, you would never have known it was happening.
Unbelievable work in bringing about change. Editor and reporter Kyle Hopkins accepts this award from Alaska.
Thank you, Scripps Howard Foundation, for this award. We were so grateful and excited to hear about it. There was a lot of amazing work done last year, and this is a project working on reporting on sexual assault and inequities in the Alaska justice system that we've been meaning to do for a long time. And the thing that really made a difference last year was we were able to join ProPublica's local reporting network that got our reporters and our photographers on the ground in villages, and we were happy with the result, very surprised and excited about the award, and just grateful to be part of this process. Thank you so much.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence and distinguished service to the First Amendment. The Edward Willis Scripps Award. The winner, It's Time for You to Die, How Flaws in the South Carolina Prison System Led to 7 Deaths in a Single Night, by Jennifer Barry Hawes, Stephen Hobbs, Glenn Smith, and Shauna Adcox of the Post and Courier in Charleston, South Carolina. In April of 2018, a deadly prison riot broke out in rural South Carolina, leaving 7 prisoners dead. Very little was said officially until reporters of the Post and Courier began to dig.
More than a year went by before anyone knew anything about what actually happened that night. And when these dedicated reporters couldn't get the information about what happened, officials wouldn't let them see records or be interviewed. They resorted to some good old-fashioned shoe leather reporting. They got people from the inside to leak them audits of the actual riot, and they sent letters to more than 400 prisoners who they thought were probably witnesses to the riot, and started corresponding with them.
More than 100 prisoners used their First Amendment right to respond to reporters. The letters helped piece together how a massive transfer of rival gangs led to historic bloodshed.
I saw a man laying in a pool of blood, so thick it looked like purple syrup. Fight to live for hours. If you take a man, boys really, 18, 19, 20 years of age, and basically tell him he has no value to his life, is it really surprising that they have zero value for the man in the cell next to theirs?
Among the things they learned was that the prison was dramatically understaffed, that gangs operated with impunity, and that basic things like cell doors and the locks were broken, and simple things like basic security issues just didn't work in the prison.
The hard work and creativity that went into getting the information and the compelling way that they told the story. The way it was edited and written made it feel as though you were in the prison the night when all the violence sparked.
The series led to South Carolina's governor allocating $100 million for prison staff raises and security upgrades.
It was very complicated putting together all of these stories and meshing it into one cohesive story that was really, I couldn't put it down. It told the story in a very effective way, and it was beautifully edited.
A tough story to tell, but so necessary. Here are a few words from the team at the Post and Courier.
I want to thank the Scripps Howard judges for this honor and to congratulate the other winners as well.
To the Scripps Howard Award judges, thank you so much for picking our story. And to all you fellow winners, congratulations and keep up the great work.
Just want to thank the Scripps Howard Award judges for recognizing our work. We put a lot of heart and soul into it, and it's really great to be recognized in this way. We also want to extend our deepest well wishes for all the other winners. Thanks so much.
The Scripps Howard Award honors excellence in human interest storytelling. The Ernie Pyle Award. The winner is The State of Healthcare in Rural America by Eli Saslow of the Washington Post. Saslow wrote a series of stories revealing the collapse of rural healthcare in America. He spent a year traveling to places like a small town in Nebraska, a border town in Texas, and rural Tennessee.
What distinguishes Eli's work is that it is completely immersive. He goes to the scene of the reporting. He is not reconstructing anything, and the end result are gripping stories that are very, very informative about a problem that very few people, I think, realize how terrible it is in America.
One story focused on a hospital staff working 12 weeks without pay, struggling to stay open.
How it touched me was it showed the emotional trauma, not just for the people who are struggling to get health care, but for the healthcare providers.
Another told of a 69-year-old doctor handling patients in 11,000 square miles.
The dedication of this doctor and the weight of all this responsibility on the doctor's shoulders is chilling, it's disappointing, and it just makes you want to do something.
He was such a great observer of detail and detail that mattered, and he captured the people and the places so wonderfully. It was just like Ernie Pyle being on the scene.
What struck me about this is that he went to rural America, places that are typically not covered. His ability to get intimate, on-the-record accounts from folks in rural America where mainstream media is held in low regard is what, to me, distinguished this work.
This told me about a problem that I was vaguely aware existed, but I had no idea of the severity of it. People die because there is not adequate health care. That's the power of independent news media. We can shine a light on that.
Yes, indeed, shining the light on the suffering, but the heroes making a difference as well. Here's reporter Eli Saslow on the honor.
I'm so grateful to have won this year's Ernie Pyle Award. It's a tremendous honor. I also think with the kind of work that I do, these embedded narrative stories, the real risk every time is not taken by me, but really by the people that I write about, who decide to let me into their lives, to tell sometimes stories of some really intimate, vulnerable moments. Most of these stories were about people who are struggling to get medical care and hospitals that are closing in rural America during a medical crisis. And in this case, People who were really struggling allowed me to follow them around, and also doctors who were working in vulnerable hospitals allowed me into their homes and their emergency rooms to document this crisis, sometimes knowing that that was going to sort of lay bare their fears and also the frailty of this system. So I'm very grateful to them. I'm also very grateful again for the recognition, and I will invest the faith you've given me back into my own work and trying to do more of these stories.
3, 2.
At Scripps, give light is not just a motto, it's a calling.
Victory for Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his labor.
Our journalists hold the powerful accountable as we strive to inform thoroughly and objectively.
Here on Denver 7, we cover important topics from multiple perspectives.
Serve local and national audiences on every platform they depend on. Our brands are woven into the fabric of the places where we live and work, and provide businesses a vehicle to be connected with reliable information. We believe in the power of journalism to change lives, to strengthen communities, and to create a better informed world.
Please welcome President and CEO of the E.W. Scripps Company, Adam Simpson.
Thank you for joining us for the 67th Scripps Howard Awards live stream. We're grateful to have you join us virtually for this very important event. As I stand here today, the global COVID-19 crisis is challenging the world. In the United States, we're now weeks into the spread of a global pandemic, each of us settling into an experience that we once would have deemed inconceivable. Schools have gone online, sports leagues have suspended their seasons, and stores and businesses are shuttered. Most people are now working from home. And yet at the very same time, journalists continue to file their stories and report the news on air and across multiple platforms. Americans are relying on quality, objective journalism to keep us in the know with the information we need to stay informed and stay safe. Journalists, production teams, and everybody in their support systems deserve our gratitude today more than ever. Just as our industry is creatively adapting to this dynamic situation to ensure we continue to fulfill our critical mission, so has the Scripps Howard Awards. This live stream, which premiered April 16th and will continue to air in the coming weeks, reflects the Scripps Howard Foundation's commitment to ensuring the show goes on. The E.W. Scripps Company is proud to support the Foundation's venerable celebration of journalism. We strongly believe in publicly recognizing and rewarding journalists for their dedication to our nation's fourth estate. Those honored this year represent the best of the best in our industry. This evening's award finalists and winners have committed themselves to enterprise collaborations, tenacious investigations, and revealing reporting. Their stories foster empathy and intrigue. They answer questions and beg us to seek more information. From local news outlets to globally known media powerhouses, the journalists celebrated tonight represent the very best of our industry. On behalf of all of us at the E.W. Scripps Company, the Scripps and Howard families, and the Scripps Howard Foundation, whose commitment to journalism and free press are foundational to all we do, congratulations to our winners. Thank you for giving light so that people can find their own way.
We are 7 awards away from the Impact Award. In just a little while, we will announce the 3 finalists. One of them will take home the Impact Award statue and another $10,000. But first, we have 4 platform awards to announce. Here is the winner for broadcast local coverage.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in broadcast local coverage, the Jack R. Howard Award. The winner is Verify Road Trip, Climate Truth by David Schechter and Chance Horner of WFAA TV in Dallas.
So on Verify, we have covered lots of controversial topics, but we've never talked about climate change, so I want to do that. What I'm looking for is a viewer who would come along on this trip with me to help me report it, someone who is skeptical about climate change. So if that's you or somebody you know, fill out the survey. Maybe we're going to Alaska.
It's an amazing journey to look at the truth about the climate crisis. And he invited viewers
who are climate skeptics to come along with him. And he selected a viewer who's a climate skeptic, took him all the way to Alaska, had him meet with some of the top climate scientists in the world. And it was a fascinating journey.
Do I think that people can change the climate? I don't think so. I don't think that they can change what the world is doing.
The documentary explained that peer-reviewed research shows 90 to 100% of climate scientists support the conclusion that climate is changing and humans are to blame.
When you burn coal and gas and oil, it produces carbon dioxide. As far back as we can go in history, like I'm talking millions of years, we have no record of this much carbon going into the atmosphere this fast.
The piece took the skeptical viewer to Alaska to see firsthand how warmer temperatures have changed glaciers, the ecosystem, and permafrost.
Where we're sitting right now would have been under about 500 to 700 feet of ice.
At the end of the story, you end up seeing this 38-year-old roofing contractor trying to grapple with his preconceived notions and now his newfound insight into climate change. The whole idea of it's no longer just the reporter trying to tell me what the reporter found, but trying to build some thread of credibility with the public that they can see through a person's eyes that looks exactly like the viewers.
0 to 10, how urgent is this problem for you?
Back I used to be a 2. I'd say I'm probably up to a 6 or 7 at least now.
That's a big change.
It's a big change.
This story was such a creative adventure and so beautiful in terms of looking at the scenery of Alaska and what it has been in the past and what it is now in terms of how the warming of it and the disappearance of glaciers. It was a very pragmatic, creative, bold, ambitious way to take viewers on an adventure into here's what's really happening to the planet.
What a unique way to teach us all about climate change, right? Reporter David Schechter accepts the award on behalf of the team at WFAA TV.
Thank you, Scripps Howard, for this wonderful award. We are so honored and excited at WFAA TV. I would like to say thank you to my partner, Chance Horner. We do all of our work together. This is truly a wonderful partnership. Thank you, Chance. Also to WFAA TV. When I went into my boss and said, you know what, we want to take this crazy trip. We want to take a viewer across Texas and then take him to Alaska. She said, how soon can you go? Which is exactly what you want to hear from your boss. This is a tremendous community of winners that we are a part of. I am so honored. We are so honored to just be on the same list with all of you guys. We are facing incredibly difficult times in our country, in our industry, but I know that no one is more up to the challenge than journalists are. Thank you so much.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in broadcast national and international coverage. The Jack R. Howard Award, the winner, Flint's Deadly Water by Abby Ellis, Kayla Ruble, Jacob Cara, and Sarah Childress of Frontline PBS.
Multiple people got sick and multiple people died.
The doctor asked, he said, have you heard of Legionnaire?
What did Michigan officials know?
A lot of people didn't want us to expose what was happening and why it was happening.
And was there a cover-up?
Test the water. They should have tested the water.
Frontline produced a documentary investigating one of the largest Legionnaires' disease outbreaks in U.S. history. It happened during Flint, Michigan's lead poisoning crisis in 2014 and 2015, when the city started using Flint River water while a new water pipeline was being built. The water treatment plant foreman had concerns.
He said it's not safe, we're not ready, he said and people are going to die.
I certainly still expected that the same safeguards would be in place no matter what the drinking water source was.
You thought you knew everything about the Flint water crisis. How many times have we heard the stories about lead? What you probably didn't know, in fact, what nobody knew, is that there was also an outbreak of Legionnaires' disease that also was linked to the waterborne pathogens that were associated with Flint's water.
The Frontline investigation found that health officials knew about the outbreak for more than a year before telling the medical community or the public.
It's totally unacceptable. There was no notification sent to the medical society. So that, I'm trying not to be profane, but that's utter rubbish.
Eventually, prosecutors opened a criminal investigation, and the state began a scientific investigation, but scientists say it was later stonewalled by state officials.
I remember my colleague telling him that if he didn't do that, people could die. Unfortunately, Nick Lyon's response was that, well, they have to die of something.
It's shocking and a great case of old-fashioned shoe leather reporting combined with technology and looking at documents to prove that that state officials once again were ignoring Flint's water problem and making it deadlier.
Frontline went way out of its way to tell us how it knew what it knew, and to show us those results, to show us the transparency of how they went about investigating this story. None of this, confronting people in the alleyway kind of stuff. It wasn't television-centric, it wasn't high drama. It was just solid, good reporting that gives you great confidence in what they're saying to be truthful and accurate and fair.
If there hadn't been investigative journalism to pull back the curtain on this, there could still be people dying of Legionnaires' disease and pneumonia from the Legionella bacteria in the water system in Flint, Michigan.
Just mind-blowing that could really happen in America. Producer and director Abby Ellis accepts the award on behalf of the team at Frontline.
Thank you to the Scripps Howard Foundation for this award. In this film, we were able to preserve the evidence and correct the record. None of that would have been possible without our sources. You know who you are. Thank you. To the whistleblowers who came forward, to the scientists at Emory University, to our families, to PBS Frontline, and to the residents of Flint, thank you. I want to honor Jasmine McBride. Jasmine passed away throughout the course of our filming, but for a year she let us in to document some of the most difficult moments of her life. Jasmine hoped that if the world could bear witness to Flint's ongoing suffering, someone somewhere might do something about it. Now more than ever, it's important we keep Flint in the national dialogue. With COVID-19 infecting cities around the country, many in Flint are high risk due to the illnesses brought on by this disaster 6 years ago. The water crisis isn't going away, and neither should we. Thank you.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in radio or podcast coverage. The Jack R. Howard Award. The winner, A 911 Emergency by Lynn Ditty, Sally Isley, and James Baumgartner of the Public Radio in Rhode Island. Reporter Lynn Ditty discovered something alarming with Rhode Island's 911 system. A year-long investigation found inadequate training for 911 call takers.
You heard, actually, people calling in anxious and scared and frightened because a loved one or someone they were with was in an emergency medical situation, and you heard the fumbling of the person on the other end. You heard the operator not really know how to cope with the emergency.
911 is your emergency. I have a baby. He's unresponsive, and he has throw up around his mouth and nose. He's on his back, but he's turning purple.
Not on his back.
Do we give him mouth to mouth? What do we do?
Okay, he's not breathing. Are you sure he's not breathing?
And she found this was not isolated, that it was a pattern, and that in fact there was a real problem in Rhode Island with how these operators were trained.
As a result of this series, the acting manager of Rhode Island's 911 emergency system was removed from his post. State lawmakers approved funding to train all 911 call takers in emergency medical dispatch, and doctors say the reporting saved lives.
It was an exceptional story for me because it had an immediate and dramatic impact on the lives of Rhode Islanders. And I was also impressed by the way in which someone with very few resources really for reporting managed to produce change in a place and among people, the people who manage the 911 system in Rhode Island, managed to produce change which was resisted really hard by the institutions that she reported on. It was just really good, straightforward audio reporting.
Frightening and sad, but just like he said, great reporting. Reporter Lynn Ditty accepts the award on behalf of the Public Radio.
Hi everyone. I'm so proud and humbled by this recognition for the Public's radio in Rhode Island. The Scripps Howard Award is testimony to what's possible when local reporters are given the support and time we need to do a deep dive. It's also proof of what local journalists can do when we prioritize collaboration over competition and thoughtful reporting over quick hits. I'm deeply grateful to ProPublica's local reporting network and my project editor, Charlie Ornstein, and all the folks at this amazing organization. I feel very fortunate, too, to be part of the Public's radio. To my editor, Sally Isley, thank you for believing and supporting me in this work. To James Baumgartner, thank you for your work in producing these stories. And to our station manager, Tori Malatia, my sincere thanks for your steadfast support for all of us at the Public's radio.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in multimedia journalism. The winner, These 3 Super Trees Can Protect Us from Climate Collapse by Vox. The multimedia piece focused on 3 super trees that play critical roles in producing rainfall, eliminating carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and supporting ecosystems around the world.
So when you start, I don't even want to say reading, because you consume this piece of journalism. From the opening segment, I felt like the feeling you get in your stomach when you go down a roller coaster. The camera zooms up from the bottom, from the floor to the top of the Amazon, and from that second on, I was hooked.
The first tree was the Brazil nut tree in the Amazon rainforest. The piece explained its role in the region's rainfall. The second tree featured was the stilt mangrove in Indonesia. It removes carbon and can keep it stored in the ground. And the Afromosia in the Congo supports the forest ecosystems.
The photography is incredibly impressive, and you scroll through the images and then the text starts popping up and it tells you about these trees. The writing was beautiful. You were reading, really lovely narrative text. You were meeting characters, you were having video, maps. It kind of had all the pieces that brought readers in.
A reporter in this story was inspired by a conservation expert who said nature-based climate solutions were overlooked in favor of technological solutions to climate change.
It was a really interesting lens into the topic of climate change, but the angles that they took and the way that which they approached it, really made you feel like you were there, and really quite breathtaking.
Each of the super trees is in danger due to threats like deforestation, oil plantations, and even shrimp farming.
I found myself caring in a very strange way about these trees and whether or not they survived, and I really hoped that they would.
Just extraordinary imagery, right? Here's Kayla Zamaria to accept the honor on behalf of the team at Vox.
Hi everyone, I'm thrilled to accept this award on behalf of my colleagues at Vox, in particular our fearless leader Eliza Barclay. It was really Eliza's vision for reframing the way we think about climate change solutions that's at the heart of Super Trees. At Vox, our mission is to contextualize and highlight some of the most complex issues, and we're really grateful that the judges were moved and informed by the graphics and the photography and the words and the maps and the way that this whole project came together. Storytelling on this project would not have been possible if it weren't for the support for the Pulitzer Center, the support of the entire Vox newsroom, and for Vox media leadership. So we're very grateful for all of that support. And most importantly, we are really proud of the collaborations we were able to achieve in this project, specifically highlighting in-country scientists and hiring local photographers to elevate our reporting. You honoring us hopefully means that more people will see this project and will learn about the important work these scientists are doing on the ground in Brazil, in Indonesia, and in the Congo. So we accept this award with humility, and we are so grateful for you elevating this project. Thank you so much.
Please welcome Liz Carter, the president and CEO of the Scripps Howard Foundation.
The Scripps Howard Foundation is dedicated to empowering journalists and supporting life-changing literacy programs. In the past 50 years, we've served more than 1.5 million people. Here's how we're lighting the way for a better tomorrow.
The Scripps Howard Foundation gives back by giving light. They light the way for a better tomorrow by changing the story for good.
The Scripps Howard Foundation is a leader in supporting journalism education and literacy.
An investment in journalism education is an investment in America.
As journalists, we are being trained to be the most accurate and truth-telling. I want to restore that trust in the media. I want to tell everybody exactly what's happening and to keep digging at it and to not let anybody go unaccountable. And it's what I live my life to do.
For me, this internship took a lot of what we learned in the classroom into the newsroom, where we were able to write stories, research, and producing and editing.
Because it was that internship that really provided a foundation, mentoring, hands-on opportunity. And I still have mentors that I talk to. That was truly a launching point for me personally in my career.
The Roy Howard Centers for Investigative Journalism are going to play a very, very important national role.
We are going to be preparing the next generation of great investigative reporters. And we're going to do this in a variety of ways using data skills and cutting-edge technology.
And that is something we had practiced a lot in the classroom, where being able to do data analysis and combing through records. But I think for young journalists entering the profession today, arming yourself with those skills early on is only going to be an asset.
The only thing that a journalist should be an advocate for is the truth. And what the Scripps Howard Awards do is recognize people who shine light in dark places and who tell stories that need to be told that otherwise wouldn't be told.
You learn about the world when you can read, and you have a lot of control over what you learn about. If you don't know how to read, you're really dependent on people around you.
I just love to read. I like reading because I get to learn about the world and math, science, and literature, and social studies.
I'm actually an immigrant, and I can't even imagine my life without books and the power of writing and communicating and being able to express what I feel. And so to be an informed member of a democracy, I think that you have to be someone who's participating in journalism, even as a reader.
And of course, children aren't able to do that effectively if they don't learn to read at an early age. Also, that media literacy is critically important.
I feel like that the foundation has helped a lot of parents in my neighborhood, in my situation, because most parents can't afford books. So this will keep our kids interested in reading and keep their educations and minds inspired and growing.
I think more of these programs like what the Scripps Howard Foundation is doing should exist to support internships and fellowships and literacy.
And ultimately to make a better informed world.
Next, we have our major award categories and the anticipated Impact Award finalists. Let's begin with the Topic of the Year award.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in reporting on the topic of the year, the impact of climate change on communities. The winner, Heat and Health in American Cities by NPR and the University of Maryland Howard Center for Investigative Journalism. The collaborative series showed that as the planet warms, the urban poor, who are often disproportionately people of color, will experience far more heat than the others because of where they live. The team used existing data, custom-built heat sensors, and on-the-ground reporting. The data exposed troubling patterns. For example, in the summer, a poorer neighborhood in Baltimore can be 10 degrees hotter than others.
The impact of that has meant more asthma and other health conditions for some of the most vulnerable populations.
I didn't really come outside, but I had to go to work. And before I know it, I was gasping for air.
breathing felt like trying to drink water through a pinched straw.
I really, really liked how they went out and created their own sensors. Even though they had all this other publicly available data that they mined and scraped through open source, they actually did their own data collection, and I thought that was really innovative.
The reporting explained why it's hotter in the city. More buildings, asphalt, concrete, and fewer trees all contribute to higher temperatures. It's called the urban heat island effect.
If you have less green cover, you will almost always have higher temperatures and greater exposures to heat.
They partnered with others around the country to be able to show that this isn't just a Maryland story, but it's really a national story. They gathered information from 97 different communities that allowed readers in other cities to go in and see how their city sort of stacked up.
In more than 3/4 of the cities analyzed, research showed heat was not evenly distributed across the city, and where it's poorer, it tends to be hotter.
I think the benefit of this particular story is that we not only look at the science with the data, we also look at the sort of poignant, intimate, personal stories of actual people on the ground. And I think the on-the-ground reporting helped make the difference for this story compared with so many other entries in this category.
This was a model of how students and professional journalists can work together to do something incredibly ambitious and original.
Wow, so educational too. Here's reporter Meg Anderson on the honor.
On behalf of NPR, the University of Maryland's Howard Center for Investigative Reporting, and the Capitol News Service, thank you to the Scripps Howard Foundation for this award. And thank you to the sources, teammates, and editors who helped tell this important story. This year's topic was climate change's effect on local communities. That's fitting because climate change, an enormous issue, is also deeply personal. The biggest decisions have consequences at the individual level. Our reporting found that the hottest parts of U.S. cities are often the poorest. In other words, it's the most vulnerable people who are suffering first from climate change. That's already happening in Baltimore's emergency rooms and on the city's hottest stretches of pavement. We know that because we saw it with our own eyes and because we saw it in our data, from the heat sensors we placed in homes to the temperature data we analyzed across the country. Our hope is that this story is an inspiration for how climate reporting can be done at both scales, the big and the small, and how multiple newsrooms can work together to do it. Thank you.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in innovation. The Roy W. Howard Award. The winner, Newsy plus Bellingcat by Jake Godin, Jennifer Smart, and Zach Toombs of Newsy.
Hundreds of protesters have been injured, and at least 27 killed by live fire.
Previous reporting found 2 U.S. Marines and 1 soldier in the Army active in this white supremacist forum.
But what we didn't know is which separatists are linked to the shootdown. Now, after almost a year-long investigation, we do know.
The collaboration paired Newsy's visual storytelling with Bellingcat's open source reporting, using satellite imagery and social media to create a series of investigative reports. Each report made disturbing revelations, from identifying Russian-backed soldiers linked to the downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 to uncovering American servicemen active in a forum for white supremacists, and revealing photo evidence showing tear gas canisters causing protester casualties in Iraq.
The way in which this was innovative was that it brought 2 news organizations together. And I think we're seeing that we are stronger together, and we can pair skill sets to create really memorable journalism.
The storytelling was seamless. The use of all these open source materials to literally put a puzzle together and to do it in a way that the viewer felt like they were part of the unraveling of the puzzle. These were complicated stories, mostly, in some cases, foreign names, foreign lands, and you needed someone to pace you through that in a way that you had time to absorb it. It's the very essence of watchdog journalism. They identified people who may be responsible for crimes. They identified people who may have been responsible for transporting a missile system that killed several hundred people. I can't think of more important journalism.
We were really struck by the transparency of the work that they did. The more that we can show our work as journalists, the more we will do to repair the trust deficit that we have with our readers and our viewers.
Wow, chilling to watch, but great teamwork here. Here's Jake Godin and Jennifer Smart to accept the award on behalf of the teams at Newsy and Bellingcat.
Jen and I are honored to be recognized for an award like this. The Newsy plus Bellingcat series wouldn't have been possible without the help of the Newsy leadership team, who gave us the space to work on it, as well as everyone at Bellingcat, who have been excellent people to work with. But it's also thanks to the massive community that is the open source community. Everybody from random people who are doing this in their free time on Twitter to people who are working on it in full-time jobs, like at Bellingcat, are responsible for our success, and we're very grateful for that. We're excited to continue working on this series in the future, and looking forward to telling more stories.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in investigative reporting, the Ursula and Gilbert Farfel Prize. The winner is The Afghanistan Papers, A Secret History of the War by Craig Whitlock of The Washington Post. The Washington Post spent 3 years and 2 lawsuits obtaining secret documents from a project called Lessons Learned. The project was created by SIGAR, an agency created by Congress. SIGAR stands for Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction. Lessons Learned consisted of hundreds of interviews with U.S. officials in charge of Afghanistan.
The report, if you had to sum it up, showed that the lessons of Vietnam were not learned. The misleading superiors, misleading information going up the chain of command, mistake after mistake.
The Washington Post eventually obtained 2,000 previously unreleased pages of documents from the report. The 6-part investigative series revealed presidents, generals, and diplomats misled the American public.
It was an amazing investigative piece that countered the narrative from the government in regards to the war in Afghanistan, and countering the narrative that we were doing well. This really stood out because of the length of time to be able to get these documents, but also how the story was told. It was very engaging. It was really good storytelling.
So when you look at Afghanistan, every single measurable activity is failing.
The multimedia report included graphics, interviews, and links to hundreds of documents.
I thought that gave it credibility. It allowed the public to be able to look at the documents on their own and see exactly where these statements were being made.
The cost of the war in Afghanistan has been steep. 2,300 U.S. troops have died. The ongoing war has cost $1 trillion.
This is the same story from the Pentagon Papers, early 1970s, where you have U.S. presidents who don't want to be the first president to lose a war. We need to know this history because we keep repeating it again and again. And so the impact should be that anybody who believes in a functioning democracy and what we've been through for the last 2 decades, I can't imagine a higher impact.
In a long career, I have seen few pieces on a topic as immense as war, this definitive and this comprehensive.
Uncovering the truth, no doubt. Investigative reporter Craig Whitlock has these words of thanks.
I'd like to express my heartfelt thanks to the Scripps Howard Foundation and to Ursula and Gilbert Farfel for their steadfast support of investigative reporting. In recent years, and especially in recent weeks, the public's hunger for high-caliber investigative reporting has never been more evident. I'm deeply grateful to my editors at The Washington Post. They didn't blink when I asked them to sue the federal government for a bunch of documents that I thought might shed new light on the war in Afghanistan. And they didn't back down when the government stonewalled us for 3 long years. Instead, my editors gave me the freedom to dig, encouragement to think big, and the space to write the story in a fresh way
that resonated with millions of readers. Finally, I'd like to thank an exceptionally talented group of colleagues in the Post newsroom who brought the Afghanistan papers to light with a gripping mosaic of documents, photographs, audio, and video. The longest war in Afghanistan history has dragged on for more than 18 years. Amazingly, there has never been an official, thorough, transparent public accounting of what went wrong. It took publication of the Afghanistan papers to reveal that senior U.S. officials systematically failed to tell the truth about the war, and that they were hiding the magnitude of their mistakes from the American people. Thank you.
And now, for the highest honor of the evening, the Impact Award, please welcome Liz Carter.
All of this year's work was impressive, but one exemplary piece had the greatest impact in 2019. The Impact Award recognizes journalism that serves the public through coverage of an issue leading to change in the public, private, or business sector. Our judges chose 3 finalists. Here they are.
The first finalist for the Impact Award is A 911 Emergency by Lynn Ditty, Sally Isley, and James Baumgartner of the Publix Radio.
911 is your emergency.
A 911 emergency was very impactful. It caused the state to change laws. All the individuals who worked in the call centers were retrained. EMTs all had to go back through retraining. They fired the director and they passed new laws. And they saved hundreds of lives. A small town, small newsroom competed with NPR, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and they were on the same level. It was an amazing piece of work, and the sound, the use of sound was perfect.
The second finalist for the Impact Award is Lawless by Kyle Hopkins, Lauren Holmes, Bill Roth, and Mark Lester with the Anchorage Daily News and ProPublica.
This is worthy of the Impact Award by just looking at the results. After the reporting from the Anchorage Daily News, the federal government, and in particular Attorney General Bill Barr, came in and influxed millions of dollars to Alaska to help with their policing problem. In communities like these small towns in Alaska, they're going to be forever grateful to these journalists for bringing to light this real problem in their community.
The third finalist for the Impact Award is Polluted by Money by Rob Davis of the Oregonian Oregon Live.
Polluted by Money is basically a call for action. People who read it, who understand the issues, suddenly are empowered. They can introduce and vote for legislation to make changes. The reporting basically puts people on notice. That means the corporations who are donating money and the politicians. Rob Davis went above and beyond with this series. It's remarkable the amount of material he took and distilled and put together in a simple way for ordinary people to understand.
And the winner is Lawless by Kyle Hopkins, Lauren Holmes, Bill Roth, and Mark Lester of the Anchorage Daily News and ProPublica. Lawless was deeply reported and compellingly presented. Judges said the Anchorage Daily News took on the role of protecting the vulnerable, leading to reforms for Alaska's broken law enforcement system. Congratulations to the Anchorage Daily News. We're proud to give you the Impact Award and an additional $10,000. We hope it encourages more outstanding reporting.
The work by the Anchorage Daily News was simply incredible. What an inspiring evening. We hope tonight gave you a boost in courage and tenacity. Our job is not always easy with long hours and sometimes few resources. Some of us put ourselves in harm's way, risk jail, or even worse. We do it because we want a better world, a more informed world. It has been my pleasure to serve as your host this evening. Have a wonderful night.
And the Scripps Howard contest reminds us, reminds readers, reminds judges that what is being uncovered would not be uncovered without journalists.
This is my first year judging. It's clear to me that the Scripps Awards are held in the highest regards, and it shows in the quality of the submissions.
It's so encouraging to read this really great journalism. It's heartening. It just made me feel so good about what we're doing.
I think there's a challenge in the country of not enough people understand what journalism is, much less why it's important. That's why recognizing good work through these awards is so important. And there is phenomenal good work that's going on despite all the financial pressures confronting news organizations. So what Scripps Howard is doing with these awards is basically validating the importance of independent journalism in America.
All of the judges are longtime reporters, and we're all keenly aware of the Scripps Howard Awards and have been for many, many years. They're one of the really true iconic journalism awards, and it demonstrates great journalism and inspires other journalists in ways we'll never know. It allows us to dream big and reach for the stars every time we get a new assignment.
Judging these awards tells me that there are cameras capturing stories that need to be told, and that's something to celebrate. That the work hasn't stopped, that the work is not narrow, that the work is still wide and encompassing of all of what we need to know that we can't see for ourselves. And people are going out to find those stories and bring them to us. So it's a celebration of what we do, but more importantly, it's a celebration of why we do it.
When you look at these winners, it's impressive. And if we don't recognize this, if we don't show the public the value of journalism, that's where I'm going to get a little worried. And you know, sometimes, depending on the journalist you ask, most people don't want to pat themselves on the back or win awards. But I think it's really important. I think it's more important than ever because it shows the public what we do and how we can make a difference. And I know every day we're seeing great journalism happening in small towns, big towns, all over the world.